Have you ever really, truly looked at a key? You know, that piece of metal you use every single day? We trust it with pretty much everything, our homes, our cars, our privacy. But what's actually going on inside that lock when you turn the key? Well, it's not magic. It's actually a super fascinating mechanical puzzle. And today, we're going to solve it. And, this quote really hits the nail on the head. I mean, think about it. You probably see dozens of locks a day. But what's going on inside them is a complete mystery to most of us. They're just these little black boxes we hope are doing their job.
So let's change that. Let's crack open that little box and see what makes it tick. We're going to explore the really elegant principles behind one of the most common locks in the world, the Pin Tumbler Lock.
Okay, but before we go any further, we have to talk about the ethics here. This is absolutely crucial. Lockpicking as a hobby, people call it lock sport, it's all about understanding a mechanism, about solving a puzzle. It is not about breaking and entering. And that's why the community lives by two simple but unbreakable rules.
Okay, so the rules are super simple and they are not up for debate. Rule number 1, you only pick locks that you own, or if you have explicit, clear permission from the owner. Rule 2, and this is just as important, never, ever pick a lock that's actually being used for security. And why is that? Well, you could accidentally damage the lock, and suddenly your front door, for example, is way less secure than it was before. This is a skill for understanding, not for messing with security.
All right, with the serious stuff out of the way, let's get to the fun part. To really get how to pick a lock, you first have to understand how it works with a key. And it all boils down to one single, absolutely crucial concept, and that is the shear line.
Just imagine the lock has two main parts. There's an outer casing that stays put and an inner cylinder that you actually want to turn. We call that inner part the plug. The shear line is just the teeny tiny gap between those two pieces. So the whole point of opening a lock, whether you're using a key or a pick, is to get all the little obstacles out of the way of this line so that the plug can finally rotate.
So what are these obstacles? Well, they're little metal pins. And as you can see here, each pin is actually split into two parts. You've got a top driver pin and a bottom key pin. Little springs are constantly pushing those top pins down, forcing them to cross that shear line and jam up the plug. It's like a bunch of tiny metal bars physically blocking it from turning. It's simple, it's effective, and yeah, it's very locked.
Okay, so this is the really cool part. This is how your key works its magic. That unique, jagged edge on your key, it's cut to a very precise code. When you slide that key in, each little valley and peak lifts its own pin to the exact right height. And at that perfect height, the split between the top and bottom pins lines up perfectly with that shear line. Once all the gaps are lined up, there's nothing blocking the plug anymore. And click, the lock is open. So here's the bottom line. The key is a perfectly designed little tool that solves the whole puzzle in one single move. Lockpicking, though, is the art of solving that exact same puzzle, but one tiny piece at a time. So how do you do that? How do you solve it piece by piece? Well, you got to do what the key does, but you're doing it manually. And for that, you just need two really simple tools. First up is a tension wrench. What this does is apply just a little bit of turning pressure on the plug, kind of like you're about to turn the key. Now, because no lock is perfectly made, this tiny bit of force will cause one and usually only one of the pins to get stuck or bind. And then you have the pick. Think of it like your finger, but way thinner, feeling around inside the lock. You use it to find that one binding pin and gently push it up. So let's walk through this. You put in the tension wrench, apply a bit of pressure, and then you start probing the pins with your pick. You'll feel that most of them are kind of springy, right? But one will feel solid. It's stuck. That's your binding pin. You lift it slowly, and when its gap hits that shear line, you'll feel a tiny click, and the plug will turn just a fraction of a millimeter. That's called setting the pin. The tension wrench holds it there, and now a new pin binds. You just find it and do it all over again, one by one. Okay, so that sounds pretty easy, doesn't it? Well, for a basic lock, it is. But see, the people who make locks, they're smart, and they didn't just stop there. They came up with clever ways for the lock to actually fight back. And they do this by essentially lying to you. They're designed to give you false information, to make you think you're making progress, when really, you're walking straight into a trap. And the way they do this is with something called security pins. So, a security pin isn't just a straight little cylinder. No, it might be shaped like a spool of thread with a skinny middle, or have little grooves cut into it like a serrated knife. And the whole point of these weird shapes is to get caught on the edge of the shear line as you try to lift it. This snagging action is what creates all the false signals that are meant to confuse you.
For instance, when a spool pin gets snagged on that skinny middle part, the lock's core will turn a lot more than usual. This is what's called a false set. And let me tell you, it feels amazing. You think, yes, I got it, I'm halfway there. But it's a total illusion. The pin isn't really set, it's just caught, and now you're stuck.
But here's the thing, the lock gives you a clue. To get past that snag, you have to keep pushing the pin up. And as you do, it actually forces the core to turn backwards a tiny bit, pushing against your tension wrench. This feeling, this crucial piece of feedback, is called counter-rotation. That feeling, that little kickback, that's how you know you found a security pin and you're on the right track to beat it. And this is a perfect example of the constant cat and mouse game between lock designers and lock pickers. These security pins turn what could be a simple task into this delicate conversation with the lock. It becomes a real game of feel, of finesse, and learning to interpret all this subtle feedback.
Okay, so we've taken a deep dive inside this thing we use every day. So what's the big takeaway from all this? Well, it really changes how you look at what a lock even is.
And honestly, this is the most important part. You stop seeing a lock as this magical, impenetrable barrier. You start to see it for what it is, a clever but understandable mechanism. It has rules, it has parts, and it has predictable behaviors. It's a puzzle, and like any puzzle, it can be solved once you understand the rules. All right, let's just do a super quick rundown of what we've covered. At their core, these locks work by using pins to block something called a shear line. Picking is just the process of setting those pins individually. Your key is just a really fast one-step solution to that puzzle. And finally, security pins are there to make that puzzle way harder by giving you false clues. So I want to leave you with a question. Now that you know the basic principle behind so many locks, knowing that the lock on your door is just a small, clever machine, a puzzle with a known solution, how does that change the way you think about security? Does it make you realize that security is never really absolute, but that it's all about layers and about really understanding the systems we rely on every single day?